Imagine this, a darkness so deep it feels like it's swallowing you whole. Then out of nowhere pain, searing unbearable pain. It crashes down like a hammer, relentless and cruel. That's what Joe Mingri felt. A dream vivid, chaotic, filled with murmurs that slithered through his mind, shattered in an instant. It wasn't just a headache. No, this was something far worse. It felt as if a sharp object had pierced through his temples, twisting cruelly as if someone was driving a nail into his very soul. He tried to move, a simple action turning sitting up, but his body refused to listen. It was as if he had been shackled, locked in place by an invisible force. Was this still a dream? He had felt this before, the sensation of believing he had woken up, only to realize he was trapped in yet another layer of sleep, a dream within a dream. He fought against the confusion, against the fog clouding his thoughts. But the more he tried, the more distant his consciousness became, like mist slipping through his fingers. And then a single question surfaced in his mind, unbidden yet chillingly real. Why was his head hurting so terribly in the middle of the night? Little did he know this pain was not just a headache. It was the first sign of something far greater. The pain didn't stop. If anything, it only made itself more known, like a blunt knife slowly carving through his skull, relentless and cruel. Panic crept in. Was this a cerebral hemorrhage, a terrifying thought? Was he about to die young just like that? No warning, no final words, just pain dragging him into oblivion. No, he had to wake up now, but then something changed. The pain, though still present, dulled slightly, as if whatever force had been tormenting him was finally easing up. And yet it lingered, an ache, a pressure, something unnatural. A stray, ridiculous thought surfaced. I won't be able to sleep anymore. How am I supposed to go to work tomorrow? Work. That was what he was worried about right now. No, forget work. I'm clearly in pain. I should be taking time off. I don't need to care about my manager's grumbling. In fact, thinking about it, wasn't this a silver lining? No work, no stress. He could actually get some time to himself. That fleeting, absurd thought was the last thing he focused on before his body finally responded. Slowly, painstakingly, he felt strength return, like an unseen force lifting him from the suffocating darkness. With effort he moved, his back shifted, his eyes fluttered open, and what he saw was wrong. At first his vision was blurry, tinged red, deep, faint crimson, as though he were looking through a thin film of blood. But as it cleared, he realized he wasn't in his familiar surroundings. Before him was a study desk, sturdy, wooden, old. On it an open notebook with coarse, yellowed pages lay in wait. The title on it stood out, etched in eerie black lettering, letters he didn't recognize. To the left, a neat stack of books, 8 in total. To the right, the wall was embedded with grayish-white pipes carrying something unknown, wall lamps connected to them casting a dim, unsettling glow. Something was terribly, terribly wrong, because this was not his room, so where was he? And more importantly, who was he now? The lamp caught his attention first, a design straight out of a classical Western setting. Its metal frame was black, crisscrossed in a grid pattern enclosing a transparent glass interior. It was about half the size of a human head, casting a dim, almost eerie glow. Then his eyes drifted downward. Beneath the lamp, an ink bottle sat shrouded in the same pale red hue that stained everything in the room. It wasn't just any ink bottle. Its embossed surface bore a blurred, angelic pattern, almost as if the divine figure was trapped inside, frozen in time. But it was what lay next to it that made his breath hitch. A dark-colored pen. Its body was sleek, circular, unassuming at first, until he noticed the tip, catching the dim light, glinting with an almost sinister sharpness. Its cap lay discarded nearby, and beside it a revolver, a brass revolver. The sight of it sent a jolt through Joe Mingri. A gun, a revolver. His mind stuttered over the realization. Where am I? This wasn't his room. The furniture, the ink bottle, the notebook, the revolver, none of it belonged to him. Panic started to coil around his chest. The air felt heavier, the confusion settling deep in his bones. But there was something else, something that made the scene feel even more wrong. Everything on the desk, the notebook, the ink bottle, the revolver was covered in a crimson veil. No, not a veil, it was the light. Joe Mingri's breath hitched. As if pulled by an unseen force, his gaze drifted upward. Bit by bit, he lifted his eyes, and then a crimson moon, hanging high, silent, unmoving, set against a backdrop of endless black velvet, it glowed with an eerie, otherworldly presence. His stomach clenched, his mind screamed at him that this was wrong. Before he could fully process the terror creeping up his spine, his body reacted. He jerked up, too fast, too sudden. His head throbbed, sharp, unbearable pain crashing through his skull. His strength gave out, his knees buckled, and he fell hard, his body slammed back onto the burly wooden chair. The pain barely registered, drowned out by the pounding in his skull, but he had no time to dwell on it. Grimacing, he forced himself up again, this time pushing off the desk for support. Then he turned. His heart pounded as his eyes darted around, finally taking in his surroundings. Where was he? What was this place? And why did it feel like this body wasn't his own? The room was small, too small, the kind of space that felt more like a confined box than a place of comfort. His eyes flicked from one detail to the next, trying to make sense of it all. 2 brown doors, one on either side of the room. They looked old, sturdy, worn by time. Opposite the wall sat a low wooden bed, simple, unadorned, not his. Between the bed and the left door, a cabinet stood open. Its 2 doors swung apart, revealing an empty interior. Below it, 5 drawers lay shut. Then to the side of the cabinet, something odd, a grayish-white pipe running along the wall, stopping at a strange mechanical device. Its gears and bearings were exposed, gleaming faintly in the dim light. It looked crude, industrial, unlike anything from his own world. His gaze drifted further. In the right corner, a coal stove. Beside it, soup pots, iron pots, various kitchen utensils stacked in an orderly mess. A clear sign that whoever lived here didn't separate living from cooking. Then his eyes landed on a dressing mirror. It stood across from the right door, old and plain, its wooden frame carved with simple, almost meaningless patterns. But that wasn't what unsettled him. The mirror was cracked, two deep fractures like silent scars on its surface as if something had tried to break through or had been trapped inside. And then his reflection, he saw himself, or rather the him of now, black hair, brown eyes, a linen shirt, thin frame. Average features but a deep, unfamiliar outline. The breath hitched in his throat. This wasn't his face. His mind reeled, thoughts crashing into each other like a storm-tossed sea, the antique revolver, the crimson moon, the strange mechanical devices. These weren't things from Earth, which could only mean one thing. I have transmigrated. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. He had grown up reading stories like this, imagining, daydreaming, wondering what it would be like. But now that it had actually happened to him, his mind refused to accept it, yet the evidence was all around him, and no matter how much he wanted to deny it, a terrifying truth had already begun to settle in. This wasn't his world anymore. So this is what it truly means to love fantasy. Joe Mingrui let out a bitter chuckle in his mind. A minute ago he had been cursing himself, yet now he was already trying to make sense of his situation, forcing himself to adapt. If not for the persistent throbbing pain in his head, he might have dismissed everything as an elaborate dream. But the pain, sharp, real, undeniable, anchored him to reality. This was real. Calm down, calm down, calm down. He took several deep breaths, forcing his panic to recede. His thoughts were still tangled, but at least now they weren't running wild. And then it happened, a flood, a surge of memories that weren't his own. They rushed into his mind like a river breaking through a dam, filling every empty space, shaping a new identity, a new existence. Klein Moretti, that was his name now, a citizen of the northern continent's lone kingdom, born in Awa County, city of Tinjin. A recent graduate from the Department of History at Koi University. Not me, but also me. The memories continued unraveling, a life foreign yet familiar. His father, a sergeant in the Imperial Army, had sacrificed his life in a colonial conflict against the southern continent. His death had left behind a bereavement allowance, just enough to send Klein to a private language school, laying the foundation for his future. His mother, a devout follower of the Evernight goddess, had passed away in the same year he had been admitted into Koi University. A brother, a sister, they lived together in a two-bedroom apartment. Their financial situation was far from comfortable. In fact, it could even be called dire. Right now, the only source of income came from his elder brother, who worked as a low-level clerk in an import and export company. A heavy burden, a struggling life. Yet Klein, this body's original owner, had still managed to complete his studies. His degree in history had given him an understanding of the ancient Fasak language, a tongue believed to be the root of all languages in the northern continent. He also knew the Hermes language, a script that often appeared in ancient mausoleums, ritual texts, sacrificial prayers, a language tied to the past, a language tied to mysticism. The weight of it all pressed against Joe Mingrui's mind. Or perhaps Klein Moretti's mind. No, not just Klein, he was Klein now. Hermes language, the realization jolted Joe Mingrui. No, Klein. His mind stirred as if something deep within had been awakened. His fingers instinctively moved to rub his throbbing temples. The pain hadn't subsided, but his thoughts were slowly sharpening. And then his gaze fell on the notebook. It lay open on the table, its yellowed pages covered in strange, unrecognizable symbols. Foreign, alien, unfathomable. But as he stared, something shifted. The letters morphed. From strange to alien. From alien to familiar. And then they became readable. The Hermes language. The ink, dark and eerie, formed a sentence across the page. Everyone will die, including me. Hiss, a sharp breath escaped him, fear raw and primal. It struck him like a hammer, sending a chill racing down his spine. His body reacted before his mind did. He instinctively leaned back, trying to put distance between himself and that damned notebook. Too fast. His balance wavered, his still weak body threatening to topple over. Desperately he threw out his hands, catching himself at the edge of the table. His fingers gripped the wood, knuckles pale, heart pounding, and then the air shifted. Something unseen stirred around him as if the very atmosphere had turned turbulent, and somewhere just at the edge of his hearing a whisper. No, murmurs, indistinct, faint, unclear, but there. A sensation crept over him, unsettling and all too familiar. The same feeling he had as a child when elders told ghost stories late at night. A chill, a warning, a whisper of something unknown brushing against his skin. Illusion, it had to be an illusion. Klein shook his head, forcing himself back to reality. He steadied himself, tore his gaze away from the cursed words, and sucked in a deep, shaky breath. But as his vision shifted, it landed on something else. The brass revolver. Its surface shimmered under the dim red glow, an unmistakable symbol of danger. And suddenly a question surfaced. Klein's family was poor, struggling, barely making ends meet, so how in the world did they afford a revolver? Klein's brow furrowed, something didn't add up. The puzzle pieces refused to fit, and just as he was lost in thought, he saw it. A red handprint beside the table, darker than the crimson moonlight, thicker than the eerie red veil, and unmistakably fresh. A bloody handprint, his handprint. Joe Mingrui's breath hitched. Instinct took over. His right hand flipped over, fingers trembling slightly as he brought it up to his face. Blood, dark, sticky, fresh. It coated his palm, smeared between his fingers, glistening faintly under the eerie crimson glow of the moonlight. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, but the throbbing in his head, it never stopped. It was weaker now, but still persistent. Did I hit my head? Did I smash it open? The thought sent a cold shiver crawling down his spine. A need, no, an urgency rose inside him. He had to see. He turned on his heel and walked toward the cracked dressing mirror. The reflection in the dim glass revealed a man, black hair, brown eyes, medium build, a distinct scholarly air, a stranger, and yet himself, Klein Moretti. His breath slowed. His mind struggled to reconcile the two identities within him, but there was something off. The lighting was poor, the crimson moonlight only offered vague illumination. He couldn't see clearly. He stepped forward and again, until he was so close that he nearly collided with the mirror. Then, slowly, cautiously, he turned his head. His eyes locked onto the corner of his forehead, and what he saw, a grotesque wound, burnt flesh, its edges charred and blackened, dried blood staining the surrounding skin, and beneath it a sickening, squirming, grayish-white brain matter, moving, alive. Are you drawing a parallel between Joe Mingrui/Klein and Lord Yi? If so, that's a brilliant analogy. Just like Lord Yi, who claimed to love dragons but fled in terror when confronted with a real one, Klein had always fantasized about transmigration and the supernatural. He read web novels, imagined being part of a mystical world, but now that it's real, now that he's living it, he is terrified. The crimson moon, the revolver, the Hermes text, the bloody handprint, the wound on his head, it's no longer a story, it's his reality. And unlike Lord Yi, Klein has no way to run. This comparison adds such a layer of irony and depth to his situation. He wanted a fantasy, but is he truly prepared to face it?